I read Diddy's 14-page indictment, so you don't have to. And yes, it's just as bad as you think. Let's get into it. Diddy is being accused of a long list of crimes, which includes but is not limited to sex trafficking through force, fraud, or coercion, forced labor, prostitution that crosses state and international lines, kidnapping, arson, drug offenses, bribery, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and racketeering. In the indictment, it states that his entire enterprises, all of his businesses, and most of his staff were set up to help him carry out, facilitate, and cover up all of his crimes. I think one of the scariest parts about this is the extent to which he went to make sure that he had victims and to make sure that he controlled his victims. So, what did he use for control? Obviously, money and power. He is very powerful, very, very rich. That alone is enough. But also, he would drug his victims to make sure that they couldn't say no, to make sure that they were compliant, and to make sure that they were in a mental frame where it was impossible to leave, right? He would physically abuse not only the victims, but anybody who witnessed it, anybody who tried to say something, and his employees who were non compliant. He would verbally and emotionally abuse these people as well. He would threaten their careers by either threatening to suppress it or to advance it if they were compliant. He would blackmail them with promising to provide financial support or withholding that support, right? He would physically prevent them from leaving, and he had his staff help him. I think in the indictment it chronicled one victim's testimony of being unable to leave the compound for a few days until their bruises and their injuries healed. He would threaten their careers and their livelihoods. He would track their whereabouts. He would get his staff to locate the victims. If they tried to flee, he would find them and bring them back, or he would find them and intimidate them so they don't go to the police. He controlled their housing. Imagine you're the victim of abuse. You're somebody who has been trafficked. You're a woman who's been abused, sexually abused, verbally abused, emotionally abused, and you are in an apartment. He would get the number of the apartment building, threaten that person, and so now you are homeless. He would monitor their records, allegedly. He would monitor their medical records, which is insane to think about. He would threaten them with firearms, and he would have his staff threaten them with firearms as well. He also used his recordings of the freak-offs to blackmail them into silence and into compliance and into continuing what he was doing with them. We already know about the freak-offs. They're very popular. They've been popular since the early 2000s. But what we don't know is his staff's involvement in the freak-offs. So usually he gets his staff, his personal assistants, his security, his house staff, his associates to help him by arranging transportation for the victims, by arranging transportation for the prostitutes, by booking hotels, by stocking the hotels, by getting supplies such as the drugs that he needs, and it's a long list of drugs, special lighting, extra bedding, and they would clean up after. The indictment stated that anybody who tried to threaten his power, his authority, his reputation, or tried to go to the police or the press, they would be threatened through physical, emotional, and verbal harm. There's two instances or multiple instances in the indictment of arson towards witnesses and kidnapping. It's been speculated for years that he allegedly has something to do with at least 5 people's death, and that would be no surprise to me based on the indictment. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. He is somebody who needs to be buried under the prison, along with all of his associates and every single person who knew what he was doing and enabled him.